welcome to my art form.
It's time for Post-Orthodoxy, a show about changing our minds.
Yeah, baby.
With your hosts, Dark and Ainsley Sevier.
Maybe what they believe about reality isn't all of reality.
What?
I know, right?
We're on a mission to have a better time with more people more often.
The question is, how do you get there?
Post-Orthodoxy explores strongly held beliefs, how those belief systems divide or connect people, and what might be found beyond those reality bubbles.
Keep calm. Don't lose your head.
I've got a piece of chocolate here with me because I got anxiety about doing this.
Welcome to this neighborhood, neighbor.
Yes, indeed. Welcome to this neighborhood. Thank you so much for joining us. This is Post-Orthodoxy Season 2, Episode 25.
Wow.
Your computer's making noises.
I know, I do this every week. Every week. How do I stop it?
Someday we'll hire somebody to do all this for us, maybe? I don't know. I don't know if I could let go of all my buttons and whistles.
I know, it's fun.
It is. It's exciting. We've titled this episode "Good News, Everyone."
Oh, is it good news?
Yeah, some good news.
Okay, good.
Some good news. We don't. For those of you that have seen Futurama, that's where that's from. Good news, everyone. Did you ever see Futurama?
Oh yeah, the doctor guy.
The crazy old doctor. It's never good news. It's always like, I'm about to send you out on a deadly mission, but
yes.
I'll make a lot of money if you live. Good news. This is like actually good news. We've, after a long hiatus of looking into anything to do with the coronavirus because of losing friends and getting kicked out of institutions wrongfully by our loved ones.
Like the pursuit of information has never been more fraught in my lifetime. Like
really?
In my lifetime to actually, I guess it depends on the subject matter.
In your whole lifetime?
Well, yes, in my whole lifetime. In this current stage of my life, we have the instant feedback loop of Facebook. So when we broadcast something or we say something on Facebook, people have immediate strong feelings about it.
And can immediately tell you how they feel about it.
Or just disappear and say, bye, fucker.
Yeah.
Which
or
is
just
really
stop talking to you and
so
then...
juvenile. That's the kind of thing that we used to like say, hey, don't be... This is like what parents used to say to kids.
Right.
Come on, you guys are going to have to get along. You just need to look at the situation.
Talk it out,
get over it. We don't talk it out. We're just like, fuck you, different person perspective.
Yeah. So we didn't look in... We decided to talk about like everything else except
for SARS-CoV-2 data.
SARS-CoV-2 data over the last 9 months or so, since getting banned and scrubbed from...
Once the vaccine started rolling out and there was all the... stuff about the vaccines, and suddenly people were getting super, like even more than the mask, like super more definitive in their views, cancel culture prone in their views around the vaccine. I'm just like, I'm not talking about the vaccine. But now some time has gone by and some data has come out.
Yeah.
So I feel better talking about it now that there's some data. It's not just a feeling or perspective.
Mm-hmm.
Now you say things.
No, go ahead. You have so many things to say. That's perfectly fine, darling.
So, Boyce Brown just
I think we're both very excited about the topic today.
Okay, yeah, you go ahead. I'm going to read this quote from...
what does Boyce
Brown said, the lab leak theory got people deplatformed last year. Now it's almost the conventional wisdom. That's something that I wanted to talk about on the show, is that we were deplatformed here in Butte from the community radio station last year. We were deplatformed for things that were never clear. They never actually said why. And the things they did say why were not true.
Lies.
But I think the impression that they tried to give to people is that we were COVID deniers or anti-maskers or Trump supporters.
Or dangerous.
Or dangerous to the... Well, that was one thing they said. We were posing a danger to the community.
Which
they
is very
never
vague.
They never said what the danger was.
Right.
We were sharing data and information from mainstream sources. One in particular, Forbes, New York Times, CDC, WHO. We were looking at data from these sources, trying to understand what the hell was going on. And anyway, so we were just sort of canceled with defamation of character, but no actually pointing to the things that we had done wrong. And I think some of the things that riled people was there was emerging data saying that the lockdowns were not going to change the percentage of death.
They're not going to change how many people die.
It wasn't going to make fewer deaths.
Right.
It might have slowed down, which has an application. Especially in the beginning, hospitals didn't know how to deal with COVID. They were putting people on intubators, and it turned out to be the wrong thing to do. Mm-hmm. Figured out some stuff, were able to start managing, but the lockdown seemed to go on for a very long period of time past where it was useful. Data is now pointing to that. And we were basically saying there's going to be some unintended consequences from these lockdowns. Other deaths, not from COVID, that would not have otherwise happened. We talked about that. We talked about terrain theory versus germ theory. And we thought it was strange that nobody was talking about immune boosting. How do you take, since you might get a virus, you might want to take care of the terrain in which the virus might take root. So we talked about terrain theory. Last year, terrain theory on Wikipedia, it was a Wikipedia page. It's not even a Wikipedia page anymore. If you put in terrain theory, which was a theory rivaling germ theory at the same time in France, if you put in terrain theory now, no longer does it talk about that doctor and his theory. All it says now is the Wikipedia page for germ theory denialism comes up. So they've scrubbed the terrain theory and now made it a conspiracy theory or a denialism when it actually is history, and it was a rival theory with Pasteur. And just to Louis Pasteur on his deathbed reported to Professor A. Renon, who looked after him. He said, Bernard was right. The microbe is nothing. The soil is everything. This was the thing. Bernard, the guy that had terrain theory, was basically saying maybe having a healthy immune system will make you less susceptible to the bugs, where Pasteur was saying you only get sick when you get the bug. Bernard was saying the bugs were everywhere all the time. You only get sick if you're not able to fight off the germ. And this was the rival. And instead of having a nice marriage of those two brilliant scientists and saying, hey, maybe both of those things have some application, we've gone completely ministry of truth and just decided that we don't even need to talk about that other theory. That it's denialism of the... Why does it have to be one or the other? It's cancel culture on Wikipedia. I used to like Wikipedia. I like if you're going to go to the dictionary, you're going to go to the encyclopedia. I liked Wikipedia, but when stuff like that happens, it makes me sad. Okay, now say something.
It makes Wikipedia unreliable.
It's really disturbing.
So after putting coronavirus data evaluation on the shelf for several months, we've started slowly and steadily and carefully going back into it, trying to keep our eyes wide open, trying to have balanced perspectives, trying to be open to having our perspectives changed just in case some of the things that we predicted last year weren't how it turned out. And over and over and over again, the data that's been coming out over the last few months that we have been dipping our toes back into the research that we were doing last year is pointing to, is validating the predictions and perspectives that us and many other concerned people were bringing up last year. And some of that is really good. Some of that is really good news. Some of that is really good news, like things about herd immunity and things about natural immunity of people who've experienced the virus in natural circumstances. And some of it is really unfortunate, bad news, such as predictions that we made that long-term lockdowns would have more harmful effects than good effects. And we were trying to preach caution to people about those tactics and because it was going to result in, and this was the prediction, not just ours, heightened overdose deaths, heightened suicide rates, heightened domestic abuse cases, childhood malnutrition, loss of homes, loss of livelihoods. And those numbers are starting to roll in. Interestingly enough, suicides actually went down in the U.S. last year by about 500 suicides. But drug overdose deaths went up by nearly 25,000 people more in 2020 died of a drug overdose than died of a drug overdose in 2019. And that's really unfortunate, and it's not surprising with how...
Not to us.
Not to us. The human species is really resilient, and a lot of people were very privileged to have financial stability, psycho-emotional support of one kind or another, communities that they could pod with, no fear of losing their home, not being trapped at home alone or with someone who was hateful to them. And those people made it through the pandemic all right, but 25,000 U.S. citizens didn't, and specifically died of drug overdoses in 2020. So that was one of the predictions that we talked about on Post-Orthodoxy. As the lockdowns carried on and on and on last year, and we begin to see this rise in collateral suffering, the question had to be asked, has anybody done a cost-benefit analysis? And are these long-term lockdowns going to cause more good than harm, or more harm than good?
Yes.
Boyce Brown says Fauci lied 3 times about important things and admitted to lying twice. 1, not needing masks. 2, starting herd immunity at 50% and raising it gradually to 80%. And 3, that the NIH didn't fund gain of function research when it did. How do you follow the science when our most trusted public health official is a stone cold liar? Yes, again, going back to the Wikipedia thing, where are we supposed to turn to for information now, and how is the normal average person supposed to find anything that they can trust when everything is being bought and paid for?
Yeah, it's a bit of a problem. I guess you can go to an alternative search engine, but I really am a little disappointed in the Wikipedia thing. I'm not sure where to go from there. How do you have... it would be nice if somebody would remake the terrain theory page, because it is a historical thing.
It's a historic scientific theory that exists. It's not just germ theory denialism.
But they made it go away. They made it not there.
It's like saying Tesla is Einstein. No, not Einstein. Who's the other guy? Who's the guy that everybody says invented the light bulb?
Edison.
So it's like saying Tesla is Edison denialism.
Right.
Like, if you think Tesla invented electrical things...
Oh, you're not talking about cars. Yeah,
if you think if you think Nikola Tesla invented electrical things, then you don't believe Edison invented electrical things.
It's really dumb.
And it's like, that's super dumb. Both of those people were inventing and discovering things about electricity at the same time. And in many cases, Tesla discovered them first, but Edison got the credit. And same thing with like the Wright brothers in flying and the other people that actually flew first. Like, there are a lot of cases in history where the master race got credit before minorities did, but that's a side topic. So the good news of today's show, I suppose, one piece of good news that I can share is that although the Delta variant is way more contagious, it is far less deadly than SARS-CoV-2 original variant.
Right.
So that's something that people could be less stressed about.
Yeah, I had a number here somewhere.
When the news says things like 83% of cases are Delta variant cases, that's not saying 83% of the country has Delta variant. And it's not saying that 83% of the people that have Delta variant have died. It's just saying that of the positive tests going around right now in the U.S., 83% of those positive tests are of the Delta variant, which makes sense because as more and more people on the planet encounter original quote-unquote original SARS-CoV-2, there are going to be fewer and fewer people left to encounter that virus and have side effects from it or not. And so as coronaviruses mutate, which we have known for decades that they do, and that is why we've never had a vaccine for a coronavirus before. So as this version of the coronavirus mutates, the SARS-CoV-2 coronavirus mutates, the new mutations will show up more in testing than the original, quote unquote, original version. Now, I don't know. I haven't looked into what kind of testing that they're using, but it's not surprising to me that mutations are showing up more. That's what viruses do. They spread around the planet. Most of the people encounter them, and then they mutate and they spread around the planet again, and then they mutate and they spread around the planet again. This is why we have cold and flu season, and so that's not a scientifically surprising thing.
So case fatality rate. Now that's not the whole thing. That's just the rate at which people die, right? Alpha variant, I guess the original coronavirus was 1.9% is what they're saying.
1.9% of people
fatality rate.
Who were known to have been infected with the alpha variant of SARS-CoV-2, alpha, beta, gamma, delta,
died with a positive PCR
so
test.
1.9%.
Delta variant is 0.2%.
Oh, geez. So way, way, way less deadly than the alpha variant.
So that's some good news.
Are we just going to name all the coronaviruses from here on out?
Yeah.
It's kind of like naming tornadoes. Like, we're all used to naming hurricanes because there are only so many every year. But naming coronavirus mutations and paying attention to what they do outside of a scientific setting, like in the mainstream media and in our daily lives, is like naming the tornadoes in the Midwest. Like, what's the point of it?
Yeah.
What's the point of it for the average everyday person?
I don't know.
Yeah.
I think, well, because when you watch the news and they talk about the Delta variant, the news is coming across as in alarming tones.
The news makes it seem really scary.
So other data on the Delta variant is that it spreads far easier and faster. And they'll say that. They'll say, oh my God, it goes faster.
It spreads around. It's far more contagious.
But far less deadly. They don't
say that part of the sentence. Yeah.
So as it's going around, that means more people are going to get it and not know that they got it. And that's how you develop herd immunity, is that the virus, new variant, weaker variant. There's another piece of data on that I've kind of been following this cat. What's this cat's name? This guy,
the Peak Prosperity guy.
Yeah,
I had a hard time finding his name. I was never able to find his name.
Peak Prosperity is the YouTube channel. This guy's some kind of doctor cat. He's a
doctor of economics.
Might be a doctor of economics. Yeah, I'll find his name later. But I like the guy's approach. He's you figure if you're somebody who's done economics, then you have to know how to look at spreadsheets and data. So that's what he does. He does some analysis on emerging data on COVID-19 as somebody who has some skills.
Yeah, you have to be able to look at it without thinking about what it means and just evaluate what the data is saying. Let me rephrase. You have to be able to evaluate the data unemotionally. Chris Martenson is the Peak Prosperity fellow.
Chris Martenson. So I like this cat. I like his approach. He's very data. None of his videos have been deleted for being controversial or stepping on anybody's toes. He really does a great job of sticking to data and analyzing data. And then after his show, he has a fairly active forum on his webpage where people say, hey, that thing that you said wasn't correct. Maybe have you thought about this, adding this factor in? And then he comes back the next week and corrects himself.
Yeah.
I like that. Somebody who has some integrity and who's not just pushing some agenda or some narrative, but somebody who's looking at the data. And one of the things that he brought up was interesting because there was a statement by Joe Biden that said most of the people in the hospital are the unvaccinated. Almost all the cases are the unvaccinated. That's what Biden said.
Right.
And so this cat's like, well, let's go find that data. And he couldn't find data to back that up. So he started looking at England's National Institute of Health, or whatever they're called, and then the Ministry of Health in Israel. Mm-hmm. And he likes Israel because they do a much better job of breaking things down, easier to take in than what we're doing over at the CDC. CDC, basically, somebody said, hey, look at this data. And it was only 65 and older.
Right.
for a 1 week period from
14
states. This is the entire country of Israel, where
for several months.
yeah, age range. So 20 to 29, 71% have been vaccinated. 70 to 79-year-olds, 92% of the country has been vaccinated. So they're heavily vaccinated. And then they've broken down confirmed cases between July 4th and July 10th. So confirmed cases of coronavirus. And they break it down to cases that people had who were fully vaccinated, cases of the unvaccinated, people who didn't get any shots, and percent of cases who were percent of cases fully vaccinated. So in fully vaccinated, 215 people between 20 and 29, 61 unvaccinated out of those numbers. 60 to 69, 227 of those cases in that week were unvaccinated, 26 or for the vaccinated and 26 for the unvaccinated. So they're showing lower numbers for people who may have had the virus and not knowing it, or people who have had the virus and developed some natural immunity seem to be less likely to get the virus now than people who have been vaccinated. That's what this data is saying from Israel.
At least in Israel, which Israel has different pollution levels than the U.S. It's a smaller country than the U.S. It has different obesity rates than the U.S., different heart disease rates than the U.S.
But they're using the same vaccines.
Right. They're using the same vaccines, and the percentages are the same. You can still look at the percentages even though their population size is different.
So this cat on his website, basically his breakdown, which I like because he's reading various, he's just looking at the data and then he makes some statement. And what he's gathering is that natural immunity is the best immunity for the virus. Some people are in higher risk and want to get the vaccine.
Yeah,
and that's
kind
fine.
of what we've been saying from the beginning is that we were never anti-mask or anti-vax. We were pro-medical choice and pro-personal research.
Right.
And
not making it a one-size-fits-all thing.
Because it's not, because we're not one-size-fits-all humans. Unfortunately, many of us have been beset with illnesses such as autoimmune diseases or other problems that give us a different experience of viruses than other people. And so what Dark and I were saying most of last summer and fall is that if there are people out there that know that they're at risk, then they should consider getting vaccinated.
Sure.
But like healthy 12-year-olds with no pre-existing conditions do not need a vaccine against a cold virus. And so what this data is showing when you break it down by decade in Israel is that these vaccines for the SARS-CoV-2 seem to be helping certain upper level age groups.
Yes. It shows that it provides a decent protection from hospitalizations and death.
At least correlatorily, there are fewer vaccinated people going to the hospital
and dying
when they're older.
Yeah.
In the older age groups. Middle age groups and younger age groups, way more vaccinated people are going to the hospital and dying than unvaccinated people.
It's interesting because even though it's providing some protection from hospitalizations and death in certain age groups, it is still spreading among the unvaccinated, is what the data seems to be saying. That the unvaccinated are actually the active spreaders of the virus, which is not what I'm seeing through my Facebook spankings from people in my timeline that are saying the reason people are getting the virus is because of the unvaccinated. But the data is showing that the vaccinated people are the ones that are spreading it more. That's what the data seems to be saying.
And we can copy Chris Martenson.
Yeah.
And use even measured tones and say there's no reason to censor our show or deplatform us because of this episode, because all we're doing is reporting on data that anybody could find if they wanted to. We're not saying what that data means. We're just reporting what the data is showing.
So to read a quote from the health ministry Health Ministry data on the wave of COVID outbreaks, which began this May, shows that Israelis... It shows that Israelis with immunity from natural infection were far less likely to become infected again in comparison to Israelis who only had immunity via vaccination. So more than 7,700 new cases of the virus have been detected during the most recent wave, starting in May, but just 72% of the confirmed cases were reported in people who were known to have been infected previously. That is, less than 1% of the new cases.
Less than 1% of new positive test results in Israel were people
who had been previously, they had natural immunity.
Less than 1% were unvaccinated people?
Yes.
Wow.
Roughly 40% of new cases, or more than 3,000 patients, involved people who had been infected despite being vaccinated. With a total of 835,782 Israelis known to have recovered from the virus, the 72 instances of reinfection amount to 0.0086% of people who were already infected with COVID. So, by contrast, Israelis who were vaccinated were 6.72 times more likely to get infected after the shot than after natural infection, with over 3,000 of the 5,193,499, or 0.0578 of Israelis who were vaccinated. So that's interesting information. So when people say, why don't you get vaccinated? The data is now saying that because I already had COVID and I was exposed to you when you had COVID and I didn't get it, that tells me that maybe I have some T-cell immunity or some stronger, longer-lasting immunity.
Yeah.
So it doesn't make sense to double down and get the vaccine if I'm not.
That's the natural preferred pathway. Natural immunity is the preferred pathway if we can do it safely. If you can run around in a play date with a bunch of your friends and get chickenpox when you're 6, that is preferred. If you get the chickenpox vaccine, you are far more likely to still get shingles, and a much worse case of the shingles as an adult. We've known this for a very long time. There are different kinds of vaccines. I would like to look into the different kinds of vaccines over the course of human history. The polio vaccine, rubella, mumps. Is tetanus considered a vaccine, or is that like a...
I don't know.
Like it
is a preventative.
It's a preventative. So I'd like to look at all those different things that you're supposed to have on a card when you go to college to prove that you're safe to go to college with in the U.S., because smallpox, people act as though all vaccines are created equal and all vaccines are equally effective and all vaccines are equally safe, and that's just not the case. It's not the case with any medication. Many medications are known to have high risks, but when the situation you would be going through without the medication is very high risk, it's understandable you might want to take a high-risk medication, such as chemotherapy and radiation, which literally kills your body slowly over time in order to kill the cancer cells.
Hopefully it kills the cancer first.
And the hope is that it kills the cancer before it kills your body. But we do this on purpose. And some vaccines and some medications are also like chemotherapy and radiation in that the medicine and the treatment itself is also high risk. But if going through the illness naturally yourself is very high risk, such as if you have an autoimmune disease or a heart disorder or are struggling with obesity or one of these other comorbidities that we knew about last March that caused people to be far more susceptible to dying from encountering SARS-CoV-2, those are the situations where you might want to consider a less effective and potentially just as dangerous vaccine in the hopes that it might save you from dying from natural encounter of SARS-CoV-2. But in general, the medically historical consensus has been that natural exposure, natural immunity, and the natural evolution of our immune systems adapting to these things is the better, healthier, and longer lasting way of going about it if you can do it safely.
Yeah, that doesn't match the rhetoric of so many folks in my Facebook feed, which I find disturbing. Because
where were you getting your less deadly Delta variant stats?
That was from that kid, that guy, the economist.
It was from Chris Martinson's video?
Yeah.
Do you have a screenshot or a link to that that we could share?
I'll find let me find the link to the video, and I'll share the video, because I think the guy's interesting. He's pretty measured.
He's not emotional. He's not political.
Yeah, he's not political. He's not taking he's not a political partisan this is what I prefer, is to not be partisan and be able to evaluate things on their own merit versus rah-rah tribalism. I'll send this, I'll put this in the comments of the Facebook feed. How's that?
Yes, please. Mercurius RX was asking for it on Twitch.
Yeah, so that's a link to this guy. And that was the thing about the Delta variant. If you go to his YouTube channel, he has a couple of videos since. We just watched one last night, which was talking about the differences between the vaccinated and the unvaccinated getting sick. And in that video, there is a screenshot. Let me find if I can share that screenshot.
All right, so the name of this video is Important Data, Delta Variant, Not So Bad. And he is putting out prosperity. He's putting out these collections of data evaluations under the YouTube name Peak Prosperity, which is his long-running website that he's had.
Right. So there was this screenshot that I think I sent to you, where he talks about immune escape. He said he wasn't. People were not talking about this because it was getting them deplatformed and banned. But now this is from. I think this is from England. He has a little excerpt from
.gov.uk.
Yeah, so this is the English government official Sage 93 minutes on the COVID-19 response. This is item number 9. I don't know where the rest of the list is.
It's at that link at the bottom of the screen.
Yeah, so it says there are 4 major risks associated with high numbers of infections. This is what they've learned. There's an increase in hospitalizations and deaths, so you're going to have higher numbers of infections. More long COVID, workforce absences, including in the NHS.
That's the National Health Service in England.
And the increased risk of new variants emerging. The combination, this is the important part that I found really interesting. The combination of high prevalence and high levels of vaccination creates the conditions in which an immune escape variant is most likely to emerge. So, immune escape variant.
So, this is something that I heard about over a decade ago. This is what viruses do. Right. This is what vaccines do. And we continue to vaccinate again because of cost-benefit analyses which have been done in the medical and scientific community. This is the story. We vaccinate over time because not vaccinating, they believe, would cause more deaths, more harm than good. But so even though we feel as though vaccinations for a long time have been helpful and causing more good than harm, it's still been known, and that, again, this is something I knew a long time ago, that ongoing vaccination against a particular virus causes that virus to mutate over time.
Viruses are like water. They're just going to go around the dam.
Which is why we have to keep re-upping our flu shot. It's not because it expires. It's because there's a new flu every year.
So the idea of immune escape is that in high levels of vaccinated folks, the virus is still spreading amongst the vaccinated, but is being frustrated by the vaccine, and so it then mutates into something more virulent. Is that the story?
Got to get around. Virus is going to virus.
Right. So anyway, I find all this. That's something I want to pay attention to, immune escape. So right now, as far as I know, there's nobody talking about a particular variant that is the result of highly vaccinated public, but that's something
talking about it.
It's something to keep an eye out for.
Right.
So if you're out there helping us do data research for our shows, please keep us posted if you come across any information over there on that topic. We have some folks commenting.
Right. So Mercurius Rex and Gabriel a superbug from too many antibiotics. Precisely. It's the same. It's the
Right.
same. It's a known issue. It's a known thing. Like, the planet is going to do what the planet is going to do. And to some extent, we have the ability to try to manage it and make it comfortable for ourselves. But sometimes when we try to manage the planet and make it comfortable for ourselves, we end up fucking ourselves later, like with pesticides and things that cause high levels of gluten intolerance in the U.S. because we put chemicals on our wheat in the U.S. that are illegal in Europe. So many gluten intolerant people can go to Europe and eat bread and be just fine because it's not the gluten, it's the chemicals that we put.
It's not just the chemicals; it's the GMO. So it's modified.
So we keep like changing the planet to suit our needs, and sometimes it works out, and a lot of the times the planet's just kind of like, all right, honey, have fun, and just does what she's going to do anyway. And viruses and bacteria are kind of like that. They're just going to do what they're going to do. And to some extent, we can only protect ourselves so much from them, which is where the conversation of germ theory versus terrain theory comes in. I think a case can be made for a combination of both theories being studied and practiced for a totality of health in society.
I'm going to read a comment from Boyce. Is that right? Boyce Brown said, "We're moving very quickly." This is a friend of the show, Boyce Brown. "We're moving very quickly to a full tilt boogie Orwellian dystopia in which big tech intelligence and the DNC corporatist Democrats decide what truth is and who can speak it." Jen Psaki said that, I guess that's the propagandist for the White House, the press secretary for the White House, just said anyone deplatformed from one platform should be deplatformed from all, and they're looking into censoring SMS messaging for misinformation, quotes, to say nothing of how Google's algorithms make left progressive, anti-imperialist, anti-globalist corporatism voices hard to find, which has been going on for years. I think this is something I want to have a whole show on in the future. We were talking about this last Monday, the press secretary talking about how the government was not violating the First Amendment by suggesting that the people who hold the terms of service agreements that we've all signed should maybe censor us. They're suggesting that maybe they should take a look at
pretty sure
certain folks.
The U.S. government is not supposed to be telling anybody in the U.S. what they can and cannot say.
So it's problematic. It's really easy to go down a fear-based conspiracy rabbit hole because there's a lot of weird things going on these days. And I think the way that the coronavirus has been handled by various governmental entities, not just in this country or this state, but all around the world, is problematic and could use an autopsy now that we're sort of out of the, we're in between flu seasons in the northern hemisphere. So this would be a good time to say, hey, what worked and what didn't work? Because you don't just figure that out one week and implement it the next week, right? It takes some time to figure out what works and what didn't work.
Oof.
It should be faster now that we have this information superhighway, but it seems to be people change their habits slowly.
Right.
So the lockdowns, the mask thing, I think it's been pretty clear that a lot of the mask stuff was really for the psychology, making people feel like they could do something to protect themselves or their neighbors, when the mask, apparently, people who had mask mandates and did not have mask mandates did not change the rate.
The percentage. Yeah.
So
the percentage of deaths. So the same amount of people on this planet are going to have died.
Whether you lock down
or not. The same amount, the same percentage of people on the planet, the same number of deaths from an adverse reaction to SARS-CoV-2 will have happened. The same number of people will have died in the end from an adverse reaction to SARS-CoV-2, whether we lock down or not, whether we mask or not. And one could argue
that's what the data says,
that more people will have died which is not going to be something we can measure because we have no control planet off orbit.
Not yet.
So this one could argue, looking at statistics of health, that more people will have fallen prey to adverse reactions to SARS-CoV-2 because of the immune-crushing responses that various countries have done, such as isolation, lack of vitamin D and outdoor exercise, lack of socialism, poor diet, loss of homes.
Yeah, I was really surprised. I think out of all the things that we were talking about, threats of these lockdowns, I was convinced that there were going to be more drug overdoses. They said drug overdoses are up 30%. I was also convinced there were probably going to be more suicides, but suicides were down 5.9%.
Which is strange.
Second year in a row. So that's good.
Yeah, that is
fewer
good.
People killed
I also
themselves.
wonder if you, and I guess, go ahead.
Yeah, but then further, there is the long-term economic impact that doesn't play out in the course of a year.
Right.
People losing their businesses and losing their houses.
Yes.
This is going to be a longer cascading effect.
Slowly losing their self-worth and their sense of community over the next several years, and then perhaps eventually killing themselves, unfortunately, or becoming addicted. So I think overdose going up 30% in 1 year is very, very horrible and shocking and telling.
So it's easy to go down a hole of this looks pretty scary. I think it looks pretty scary. I think when they start, we got deplatformed, other people are getting deplatformed, not for doing anything absolutely incorrect, just not popular. And that's what I find really disturbing.
Why shouldn't we get deplatformed?
Are you asking rhetorically?
Yeah. No, I think it's important to keep asking these questions. Why are we here? Why are we talking about these things? Why are we questioning the narrative? Why are we talking about lockdowns when they already happened? Why shouldn't we be deplatformed? In your opinion?
I don't think you can have a debate unless you can hear two sides of a debate. I don't think you can actually, if you're not allowed to look at or examine some data that goes against a corporate or governmental narrative, that's a problem.
Right.
It never plays out well when that happens. I don't know where that's been a good case in the history of the U.S. or the history of the world where people started restricting information and it played out great for everybody.
Well, yeah. As Ainsley in the present day, I agree with you that we should be having debates, especially about the most important subjects. But as somebody that spent the first 27 years of her life in a strongly held belief system, I understand the mindset that says the more important the thing is, the less we should talk about it. The more important the thing is, the less we should let anybody debate it because lives are at stake.
Also, the reason we should be deplatformed is the name of our show is Post-Orthodoxy, and it's the premise of the show, is to look at where fundamentalisms, dogmas, and orthodoxies are and see if they stand up to integrity. Maybe some should stay. Some dogmas are working out pretty good. Some fundamentalisms are pretty clear and work. Mm-hmm. It's not always oppressive. Mm-hmm. Sometimes it is. And if you're not allowed to examine that, then you're just allowing oppression to continue. So,
what do you think about this headline? President Joe Biden announces the U.S. will end its combat mission in Iraq by the end of the year.
Well,
what does that say to you? As a person that's been following U.S. combat missions for a long time.
It didn't say that they were leaving Iraq.
No, if you scroll further down through the Twitter thread, more news articles clarify that the U.S. presence is not leaving Iraq at all.
Right.
They're just ending their quote, and most every other news source puts it in quotes, their combat mission.
Yeah, I don't know what that means. It sounds like something good, but I don't know if it's going to change anything, if the military base is still going to be there.
Our role in Iraq is just to be available to continue to train, to assist, to help, and to deal with ISIS as it arrives.
And make sure that they don't switch to the euro for the petrodollars.
Right.
I think that's why we went in mainly.
To Iraq?
Yeah. because Saddam wanted to switch to the euro. He wanted to start trading oil in euros. And we said no.
Right. I thought it was because Iraq bombed the two towers.
Yeah, that didn't happen.
Well, yeah, they
said it was Saudi nationals on the airplane. That's not Iraq.
But we invaded Iraq because of 9/11.
Did we?
That was what I was told when I was 13.
Yeah, that's not. I haven't been able to find that story play out. I don't see that story anywhere.
So Saudi Arabian people bombed the two towers.
That's the story, is that the people the passport that they found that somehow fell out of a burning building and airplane was Saudi.
Okay, this is why I don't get into 9/11.
No, it's so like, yeah. They say that's the official story. Is the Saudis attacked?
Yeah,
yeah.
As someone who was not traumatized by it because I was too young to really understand what was going on, and therefore I didn't become married to a version of the story. Anytime I look back over 20 years ago and be like, so wait, what happened and who said what and what order did things happen in? I find myself like, chuckling. And I feel badly about chuckling because I know that that's a very pivotal, traumatic event for a lot of Americans. So when you say something like, we know who was flying the plane because a passport fell down from the two towers and was found.
Mm-hmm. That's how we knew.
Like, are you sure there wasn't some sort of, like they didn't say it over the intercom?
They had pictures of 16 Saudi guys.
They didn't boast about it online somewhere ahead of time?
Online wasn't that big of a deal back then.
Oh, some forum.
Yeah.
Oh, weird.
No, that's September 11th is another one of those stories where I was completely perplexed that we weren't talking about certain things.
Mm-hmm.
So, it's complex. There's personalities involved. George Bush Jr. had a grudge against Saddam.
Right.
Because Saddam apparently tried to have George Bush Sr. assassinated. So George Bush Jr., now that he's president, he's going to take care of that bully that was bullying his daddy. There's a story I have that is second generation. So I know this lady who went to go see George Bush in the Oval Office to go talk to him about it's probably like Alzheimer's or something. I can't remember what organization she worked for, but she was there to talk about the importance of funding for Alzheimer's research or some other disease. It doesn't matter. She was there to talk to him, and he was super agitated, wasn't listening to anything she was saying, and then he interrupted her and goes, "You want to see something?" And he opens up his drawer, and he pulls out this little baggie with a gun in it. He's like, "We got it." And everybody's looking at him like that, like whatever. We got his gun. We got Saddam's gun.
Okay.
Exactly.
So
that whole thing right there, the fact that he was so excited.
The president of the United States
had Saddam Hussein's gun.
So
this is pre going into Iraq. No, this is after we went into Iraq.
Okay.
But it wasn't. The premise was like, we're going to do something, right? So George Bush's ratings went from like 30% to like 93% after September 11th.
Right.
And then suddenly he had the will of the people to go kick some ass. So he went to Iraq. And Saddam was trying to trade oil in euros and not the US dollar, which is a problem.
Right.
Same thing happened to Kuwait and a few other places. So yeah, there's all kinds of levels. There's like what the CIA did. There's what George Bush was thinking he was doing.
There's what the American people thought happened.
And it had nothing to do with September 11th.
Right. So that's probably about enough of talking about that subject in one show.
Yes.
Yeah, that's still one of those things I'm kind of terrified to touch with a 10-foot pole.
Right. Well, let's just talk about coronavirus some more then.
Well, I have another subject for you that's tangential. An ad that showed up. No, it's not an ad. It was an ad that showed up on somebody else's Facebook that they then shared to this Facebook group, Victims of Psychedelic Class Warfare and MK Ultra Shitposting Memorial Fund,
yes.
which is a fantastic Facebook group for memes, if you like memes of the end times and the alt times.
Yeah.
And so this meme, this ad that someone got was an ad for like life insurance for millennials. None of my friends talk about life insurance. I'm pretty sure I haven't really ever heard anybody under like 40 talk about life insurance. It's not a conversation that we have. I know it's a conversation that older people have. That was a big part of the American narrative for a long time. But to me, it doesn't really seem like a thing that is part of the story that we talk about renter's insurance and car insurance, but I don't really hear people talking about life insurance very much. But now there are Facebook ads coming out marketing life insurance to the young and galactically attached, the networked, marketing life insurance to the online communities, the digital communities of the world. So it's not a weird envelope with multiple colors that shows up in your mailbox, and it's not a guy knocking door to door, and it's not a billboard. It's an ad on your social media that says, why don't you start buying this thing so that if you die, your loved ones get some money? And they're selling it hardcore to the millennials. This ad is saying it's called Dead Happy, and you get to set up a death wish. And your death wish is what you hope your loved one will do with the money that they get when you die. So this guy, Mark, young, healthy, 30-something fellow, has set up his Dead Happy account. Yeah. And for Rachel, I'm guessing probably a girlfriend. And he says, Rachel, pay off the mortgage and buy lots of dogs. Love, Mark. So in the unhappy event that he dies, Rachel does not have to be unhappy about it.
Yeah. She'll just have a bunch of dogs, which will make her not an ideal dating candidate. She becomes the crazy dog lady at that point. Maybe that's his secret wish.
Yeah, the payout amount in the end is 210K pounds, which is only about $400,000, which would not take care of Rachel and a ton of dogs for the rest of her life.
Depending on where they live.
Unfortunately.
Sure. I looked up Death Happy or Dead Happy. What's the thing?
Dead Happy.
Dead Happy. And it goes to a site called bestow.com.
Oh.
Get your fast free quote.
For bestowing.
No medical exam. And instant decision.
You can instantly just give us some of your money every month.
So your algorithm knows more about you than your doctor. So I'm sure they can just tap into your Facebook page and figure out what kind of risk you are.
Right. It's true. And so I think this ad is interesting because another one of the videos that we watched for research last night was talking about the life insurance companies that are running...
As the big boogeyman?
Well, I mean, just like the paper trails are there. They run things. And
insurance is fascinating.
Yeah, life insurance started like 180
auto
years ago.
Home insurance.
And it's been kind of like, you know what we really need is more people to live long enough to pay us a lot of money, but not so long that they die within the window where we have to give it back to them.
Yeah.
And so that's kind of an interesting... I thought that was interesting that I saw that meme today after having watched a show about life insurance last night. And this is just further proof that your algorithm is definitely listening to you.
Boyce Brown is going down the road talking about September 11th with some facts and figures. I love that thing. I was completely obsessed with it.
With 9/11?
With 9/11. Especially when I got a computer and got on the internet.
Oh, I'm sure, because I was right about that same time, probably.
Well, what was interesting in 2001, just to put it in some historical context.
Historical, right.
Historical context. The battle in Seattle was 1999. So the battle in Seattle was...
I don't know what that is.
Well, the battle in Seattle was an uprising of citizens, and it was happening all over the world. They stopped getting distracted by the Republican-Democrat thing for a little bit and started looking at the World Trade Organization and the International Monetary Fund and these large globalist mystery groups and saying, hey, these are the fuckers. We've been doing this puppet game with politics. Let's deal with these fuckers.
The financial people.
And it was happening all over the world. There were uprisings all over the world where people were saying, you know, you guys came in to say that you were going to improve our lifestyle, but you just put the vein of capitalism in. Now, like farming that was fine for like the last 4,000 years, now we're in debt to you guys because you gave us some water pipes. So, right. So that was exactly. So they put them in debt. I was on the internet. I was an activist. I was a part of the there was a big protest in Honolulu in 2000 for the Asian Development Bank, which is like the little sort of Asian brother of the International Monetary Fund. It was really interesting. 500 hippies with some pots and pans banging in a parade, and the Honolulu Sheriff's Department, Police Department spent $7 to $9 million on prep with riot police and bicycle police and snipers on towers.
Oh my gosh!
And it taught me a lot. And I was watching because I'm like, wow, I can look at the world on the internet. So I was looking at all this stuff happening all over the world, and then September 11th happened, and all that stuff stopped. Suddenly, I couldn't find those stories anymore.
No more activist
No,
stuff.
we have to deal with a threat over there. Terrorism. And that was the introduction of terrorism as the new communism or bugaboo or whatever. So September 11th served a lot of purposes politically, whether it was designed to do that to serve those purposes, or whether it happened and then those purposes were then exploited.
You have to read Boyce Brown's comment because it has a lot of beautiful Hawaiian words that I will botch if I read it myself. Norm Goodwin says the insurance companies sell the policy, but there are people who buy your policy and give you half of your payout while you're alive and then collect the full amount when you die. It's a loan. Interesting.
Rumsfeld testified to the Senate that the Pentagon lost $1.5 trillion the day before 9/11. We know this one. The controller of the Defense Department became executive director of the 9/11 Commission.
So these are like if we were I meant his comment at the very bottom of the page.
Oh.
So if we were to do a 9/11 show, we would want to put together interesting pieces of data for our listeners to evaluate. This is not that show.
This is not that show. So he says, Me Too. I don't know what the Me Too is for, but Me Too. I researched it online for 16 hours a day for 2 months. Almost went nuts and had to go to Kalalau Valley on the Nepali coast of Kauai for a week to preserve my sanity. I know it made me feel crazy that there was some good questions that I was shamed for asking.
Can I make a horrible proposal that's probably going to make everybody mad?
Say it.
9/11 is the ooey gooey orgasmic love it or die conspiracy of the right. Just like coronavirus is the ooey gooey orgasmic hate it or die conspiracy of the left. You have to respect 9/11 on the right, and you have to just wear a mask on the left.
It got exploited.
And people were being pushed and brainwashed by the media.
But even my lefty liberal friends who were not willing to go down the rabbit hole were like, well, I guess the official story is the official story, which doesn't make any sense. Well, the story doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, I guess I wasn't really in touch at all with the left or the blue team back then.
I couldn't talk to anybody. It's like coronavirus in that I couldn't talk to very many people about it. Mm-hmm. Like as Boyce was saying, it was isolating because you're like, wait a minute, they're saying 2 + 2 is 36, and I'm doing math the way that I knew how to do math.
You must not do your own research, Dark.
It was completely maddening.
You must not.
I wasn't doing it 16 hours a day, but I was on it. I was constantly looking at all the new data. I was really frustrated with the Loose Change movie because the Loose Change movie came out, independent film, great points, and then a bunch of conjecture. And it's like, whoa, you could have made that movie half the size, laid out some questions, and it would have been great. But then people started picking apart the conjecture. They were trying to connect things they didn't have the data to connect.
Right.
And the points that were there were enough. But because they tried conjecture to connect things, the story got deconstructed. It's the same thing with the coronavirus thing. Like,
there are some
you have to stay on data.
A few really valid points. Gabrielle says, how can we converse and research in a realm of cognitive dissonance?
It's hard.
We're fucked.
This is a positive, uplifting edition
Good
of the show today.
news, everyone. Good news, everyone. The Chicas are done with this shit.
Oh, yeah?
Several Olympic teams are wearing different clothes to compete in spite of fines, because they're sick of the sexualization of their sports.
Oh, right.
So we've got German gymnasts wearing full body unitards rather than the bikini up the arse. And we have the Norway's women's beach handball Olympic team.
Not wearing bikinis.
Wearing skin tight booty shorts.
Yeah.
But it's not a bikini. They're wearing booty shorts and sports bras. And they're being fined $150 each every match. 150 pounds each every match. And Pink said, fuck it, I'll pay.
Oh, so Pink's going to pay all the fines?
Pink is covering their fines so they can wear what they're like, we're here to play volleyball, not have cameras shoved up our arses. It's an international goddamn sport, and we're the queens of our field, and people should be evaluating our sports prowess, not...
And we should all have opinions about the bikinis. That's a really important topic.
Right. We should all be talking about that. Lots of news. But I also think those are some good things.
Yeah.
Yeah. And Mercurius RX makes a good point, which is what I immediately thought of, which is skin tight anything doesn't stop anybody from looking at anything, which is true.
Right.
But I think it's a step in the right direction. For
That's
sure.
Good.
If the clothing change, if you want to make a clothing change that doesn't interfere with your ability to compete at an Olympic level, then you should be able to do that.
Right.
So that's kind of cool. Negative Olympic news, some good news, some ugly news. The Olympic scoring committee publicly decided to not give Simone Biles all of the points that she earned.
Oh, yeah?
Because she earned so many points in her routine
because of
that it would make everybody else's routines not even worth putting on the score chart with her. So they said, once you've hit a certain point, we're just going to say that you hit A.
Okay.
That's A. You can't get A plus 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 plus. You're just A. So that's a boo for Olympics. I'm sorry. Isn't the Olympics about the godmen on Earth? Historically, Olympics is about the best of the best of the best.
Right.
Literally demigods in ancient Greece. And we have a demigoddess doing gymnastics routines that other people would kill themselves trying to do. And they're just look, A is the highest grade that we give. Sorry. So now the U.S. Olympics team is going into the tomorrow in only second place. And people are like, oh, I don't know why. It's because morale, bitches. Along with that, as the audience for almost everything else evaporates, we reach for Occam's razor. Where did everybody go? Last Olympic Games, there were 27 million people watching. This year, there were only 17 million.
Coronavirus killed him.
R.I.P. There also aren't as many people at the movie theaters and aren't as many people using streaming services. So where the heck is everybody?
Coronavirus killed them all.
I like to think that they're gallivanting around with all the people that aren't going back to dead-end 9-to-5 jobs because they had to live without them for the last year and said, fuck this. Something's got to change.
Yeah, it's weird. I didn't even know the Olympics were happening until they started happening. There's usually a big, long build-up. But we've just been talking the I don't watch the news anymore. I don't watch the mainstream news.
When did you ever watch the news?
I used to keep up with, I would have certain sites that I would go to and, find out what the narrative is.
Right, what's going on these days.
What's going on with the narrative. But I stopped paying as much attention after 2016 because it just became too partisan.
Lame.
And there was no integrity to the conversations or arguments anymore. It was either my way or the highway, and didn't matter if they were left or right. It was just everybody became my way or the highway, and I was like, well, that's dumb. It's a dumb way to talk to people. So I stopped paying attention to what was happening in the mainstream narrative. You can't not know completely because it's in the world. I've isolated myself from it pretty good. I don't have to an office job where I have to talk about the speech last night or any of that business. Or
the sports game.
I'm not interested in Biden. I don't see him as an interesting cat. I don't think it's
kind of interesting that he's it probably came from a lab in China.
This weird senile guy who's just doting around.
I feel like half the things he says aren't even things that someone planned for him to say, because I know everything that the president says is like planned by speech makers and policymakers and stuff. And I feel like with Biden, it's kind of like they accidentally were talking about things in the next bathroom stall over, and he heard it and just added it into the stuff that he's saying. Biden
and Trump, neither one of them, I can't get into discussions about them as policymakers because I don't really, once I read that represent us thing, I mean, it, but then when you see the data of your representatives are not representing you, they're representing the donors. And we all know that now, but let's just rally behind the next not a terrible person again. I don't know
whether
how many
the
times we can
American
do
people
this.
want it or the American people don't want it. The outcome amongst representatives is going to be about the same. Do you have anything else that you wanted to bring to the table today for our Monday show?
What's going on Thursday?
Astrid Selling from Sweden.
We'll find out what the hell's going on in Sweden.
What the hell is going on in Sweden?
What's the difference between being in Sweden and being in the USA right now?
Many things.
Let's find out.
They don't have very much nighttime over there.
Yeah, let's find out what's going on.
That would be annoying to me.
We don't have very much nighttime over here in Montana.
Yeah, but they have like 3 hours of nighttime.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Get a lot of stuff done.
Gabriel says, I want to see Olympic psychics and mediums. Who can remote view and beat the double-blind averages the best? That sounds kind of cool, actually. How do you judge the accuracy of that? But that would be fun.
Yeah, I don't have any other additional stuff. It was nice to see some folks online and see some conversations going back and forth. Our show with Andrea I just looked at the comments. It was like 147 comments on our Thursday show. So thanks for participating in the dialogue. We can always continue the conversation after the show is over. Yes. I do check back in. I was trying to find Norm Goodwin's. He had this nice, and I can't find the thread it was on. I don't know if it was like the live stream on my page or the Post-Orthodoxy page or if it was on Andrea's page, but he had this really nice break. We were talking about black holes and white holes and all. He had a nice little theory, and I was going to talk about it on the show today, but I can't find it.
Oh, the black holes and white holes theory.
Yeah, but there was a whole thing that he wrote a nice long piece, which I didn't get a chance to fully read, and I really wanted to dive into it, but I couldn't find it before the show. Oh. So maybe I'll find it before Thursday.
Let's see. Well, it's probably because Facebook is sorting by newest comments, instead of like all comments.
Yeah, I tried all the permutations and screwed around. I couldn't find it. But I really appreciate everybody getting involved in the dialogue, commenting on commenters on YouTube, on Twitch, on Facebook. This little chat bot that you set up is starting to get some action. It's really nice to see it. No, I don't have any other new things. Norm said I can post it again. I edited it and forgot to post it again. Sorry. Oh, no wonder I couldn't find it.
That's why we can't find it. I was like, we read that thing about the infinite. We read that thing about multiple Andreas and multiple time streams.
Yeah.
We read that thing about everybody who's ever tripped is actually always tripping.
This was post-show.
Oh, yeah.
It was post-show, and it was I'm like, I got to go back and read that, and then it wasn't there anymore.
We like your comments.
I'm glad that it wasn't just me not being able to negotiate the page.
That's a little ego boost for the end of the day. Guys, we really appreciate you. We appreciate our lurkers. We appreciate people tuning in on Twitch and YouTube. Thank you, Gabriel, Boyce Brown, Mercurius RX. And anybody that's going to watch this in the future, yep. We do this show to have these conversations with you all. So
comment in the future and we'll meet you there.
Yeah. Have a great night, guys.